Good morning, everybody. I'm Hot Rod Bob, and you've got Gas, the morning edition. Welcome once again to another exciting show about everything. Well, automotive trivia. I'm Hot Rod Bob, and it is today's Wednesday morning. It's Windshield Wednesday. That's right, that little piece of glass in front of your face while you're driving down the road in your favorite automobile, car, or truck. Well, mostly. Now, if you go back in the history of the automobile, they didn't have windshields. When the cars first came out in the late 1800s, they were basically converted buggies from horses, and no one went fast enough that a windshield was really needed back then. So there wasn't one. Now, the first thing they did is, well, I need to be able to see, so let's put a plate of glass there in front. Well, that worked. It kept the bugs off, but a little stone chip up would shatter that glass, and it would cut the people behind it. Yes, and I know that Roseanne's got a couple of chips in the glass in her windshield as well. Steve Willis from Vegas is watching right now, too. So what did we do? Well, the first thing they did was the windshield of a solid piece of glass, or just a single layer of glass, but glass just like you have in the window at your house. Now, what happens when it gets struck by a baseball or a rock or a errant bird? It just shatters into very sharp shards. Now, that's not going to work, and that's dangerous for the people behind it. Now, in the late teens and 20s, they started coming up with a more resistant glass to shattering. And what they did is they put a piece of, well, initially cellulose. Edouard Benedictus, a scientist in France, had wrapped a beaker with a cellulose fiber or cellulose material. He dropped that beaker. It broke, but it kept the same shape. Yes, Craig, goggles, and that's why the original drivers did wear goggles. But, yeah, sometimes when you took the goggles off, you looked like a raccoon. So they needed to find something else. Besides that, your clothes got all messed up. So that's where the windshield started. But this French inventor had figured out that cellulose kept the shape of the glass without it shattering and breaking all over the place. So the first laminated windshields had a cellulose liner in between two plates of glass. This worked out much better, but it's still not quite good enough because the cellulose after time would either separate or yellow and became difficult to see through. By the 1930s, though, we had laminated glass using a polyvinyl butyral, B-U-T-Y-R-A-L, PVB for short, and that is what we're still utilizing today. However, it's changed just a little bit, because in the 1970s, thanks to Ralph Nader and his Unsafe at Any Speed book, not only was the Corvair hit, but so were windshields, because a lot of people were using them as a way to stay in a car in an accident. Yeah, they didn't use their seatbelts, so they flew into the windshield. When was the first time you met a windshield? Yeah, I'll talk about mine in just a little bit. So what they did is they started coming up with a test to see how strong the windshields were, whether it caused more damage to the passenger or whether it held them in the car. Now, one of the theories early on was if you got ejected from the car, you'd be safer than staying in the car. Wrong. And they had pop-out windshields and all sorts of things. Ford was one of the first companies to really work hard on getting the windshields safer. But you know who the first company was to put a windshield on the car as optional equipment? No one? Anyone? Oldsmobile. Yes, Oldsmobile. They were the first one also with an onboard starter, so you didn't have to crank the car over. They had the first electric starter. They also had the first windshields as part of the car. An interesting situation. It didn't happen until 1914 or 1915. It took them that long to make it a standard piece of equipment on an automobile. Hi, Steve Jobers. How are you doing this morning? So in the 30s and the 50s, new design windshields started coming out. They went away from the two-piece flat glass chose curved, formed, molded glass. This way they gave better shapes, better aerodynamics, and stronger windshields. It worked, and we still have those today. They figured out how to curve a windshield without causing you to lose visibility. The early curved windshields kind of distorted what you were looking at through the side. So they came out with that. In the 60s, like I said, Ralph Nader in the 70s came up with a federal standard on windshields. Now, initially, like I said, the pop-out windshield, one that when you hit it, it moved out of the way so you didn't get a severe head injury, was pioneered by Tucker, along with other safety things, such as a recessed dashboard, a padded dashboard. There were different things tried. Studebaker also had a recessed dashboard, much like the Tucker. As a matter of fact, if you look at the 1950-51 Studebakers, they kind of resemble a Tucker pretty closely. So, look at that. But the windshield has gone on, and they're making them out of special glasses now, high plastic in the glass. And the windshields are thinner, but they're stronger. Now, initially, side windows became laminated glass as well. And my 56 Chevrolet has laminated side glass, as does my Plymouth and other cars we have. Now, that was considered the way to go for a long, long time. But as cars got heavier and fuel economy was more important, they came out with tempered glass. Now, tempered glass is easily seen once it's broken because it goes into little tiny pieces. You don't get sharp shards, you get little bitty pieces, and it just shatters. Now, you see that a lot on some store windows that they use a tempered glass. It's a little bit safer, less likely to get major cuts from sharp, long shards of glass. But they also were able to make the glass thinner and lighter. By adding some plastics to the glass, they've made the glass stronger and less capable of breaking. So it'll take a little bit more pounding. I know when my son was a fireman, he kept a spring-loaded punch in his toolbox or toolkit or belt or whatever, in case you get to a situation where there's an accident, you've got to get in. You could hit the window a lot and they won't break, but you take the spring-loaded pointer or piece and it pops the glass. Just that little bit of point and the power of the spring will shatter the glass so they can get into a car in the case of an emergency. So windshields and windows have come a long way. There have been roll-up windows. There are electric windows. They're all tinted glass. That's another thing. Glass was clear for many, many years and offered no UV protection or no dampening of the sunlight coming in. They added tinted glass. Initially, it was a bar across the top or a shaded piece across the top of the glass. Now, in the case of, say, the Corvette ZL1s that came out in 1990, they actually had a copper coating in that glass that held back UV rays. Now, a lot of the sunscreens they put on the windows, a tint, a plastic tint, also helps in case of a glass shattering. It'll hold it in place. It also provides UV protection. Now, in some states, tinted glass on the side by the driver and the passenger are not legal, so be careful when you do that kind of thing. The rear window on my Corvette, for example, that's a huge piece of glass in the back. It's got a vinyl tint on it, a dark black tint, to keep us cooler. It reflects the heat. It keeps the heat from getting in. I don't have direct sunlight on my back, so I'm not going to get sunburned. Who would want me to have a red neck anyway? Okay. All right, so when was the first time you met a windshield? I was 17 years old. I had a 1959 Simca, and I was customizing it. I put a competition stripe across the nose. Not that the car was fast enough to really utilize one, but I had one. And I put bucket seats in it. It had a bench seat. I took bucket seats out of a friend's Anglia and mounted them. Now, they only had U-bolts in the front because they had a tilt. The Anglia was a two-door. Well, at that time, there weren't latches to keep those seats in place. One day, driving with a date and two friends in the back seat, we met a Buick. Stopped rather abruptly. Well, the seats came forward. I'm at the dashboard, the steering wheel, and almost got to the windshield. My passenger, my date, she found the windshield. It popped right out just like the Tucker. The people in the back seat ended up underneath the front seats, and it took us a while to get everybody situated and out of the car. But a little bit of a bruise on the young lady's head alongside me, and that was the only injuries we sustained, other than my wallet was severely bruised. But windshields, a very important part of motoring. Now, how do you tell the difference between a happy motorcycle rider and a happy car driver? Well, the motorcycle rider's got bugs in his teeth. Well, worked for me. Anyway, I'm Hot Rod Bob. You got gas, the morning edition. Thanks for tuning in. You're our gasaholics, and I do appreciate you being here. Don't forget, we just dropped our new Talking About Cars this morning, and it is up. It's also on Facebook. It's on YouTube. Join our YouTube page. Go to Two Tired Guys Productions. Subscribe. Doesn't cost you a dime. And you can check out all the latest and greatest from Talking About Cars and Gas on Two Tired Guys Productions YouTube page. Thanks for tuning in this morning. Glad you could be here. We'll talk to you again soon. Hi, Jerry Burwell, Ken Sapper. Thanks for tuning in this morning. And Phil Hoffman said he flipped a car but never met a windshield. You had your seatbelt on. Take care, folks. I'm Hot Rod Bob. You've got gas. Brought to you by Valley Head Service. See, right there. Irwindale Speedway, Irwindale Drag Strip, Service Tech, where you get all the equipment you need for that garage you're working on your car with. Moon Eyes, Beach Underwriting Associates, and Tucker Tire. You guys have a great day. I'm going to, too. And I'll see you tomorrow. It'll be a terrific Thursday, and we'll see you then. I'm Hot Rod Bob. You've got gas. The morning edition.